Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, SUKKAH Mem Zayin. We begin on Mem Vav Mem Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. So nowadays, what do people in Chutz La'aretz do? On Shmini Atzeres, they sit in the Sukkah? Do they make a bracha leishav Sukkah? Let's see. It says more 4 lines from the bottom, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Berei, the Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, and he said it Mishmei in the name of Rav, Mishmei the Rav. Shmini Safek Shvi, on the 8th day of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, which is really Safek day 7. Day 7 is still within the Zman Mitzvah's Sukkah, but 8th is not. The 8th day is Bayase Safek. Is it 7? Is it 8? So what do you do with regard to Sukkah? The halacha is Shvi'i lo Sukkah. It's considered like day 7 in reference to Sukkah. Ushmini lo bracha. When it comes to bracha, Rashi explains, as far as davening, as far as birchas hamazon, as far as kiddush, we relate to this day as Shmini Atzeres. So when it comes to Sukkah, we treat it like day 7. When it comes to other things, like day 8. That's Shitas Rav. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, no, Shmini lezeh. Even with respect to Sukkah, we treat this day like day 8. Now, what exactly are they referring to? Explains the Gemara. Meisev kuli amule pligi diasvinan. All agree. Rav, Rabbi Yehuda, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you meant to sit in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, which is really Safek day 7. So sitting, yes. Ki pligi lebruchi. The question is, do you make a bracha leishav Sukkah? L'mandam shvi Sukkah, according to Rav, who said that Shmini Atzeres is treated like day 7 of Sukkos with respect to mitzvah Sukkah. What he meant was bruchi nami mevarchinan. Not only do we actually sit in the Sukkah when we eat and sleep, but we actually make a bracha leishav Sukkah, because otherwise people are not going to sit in the Sukkah. If you're not going to make a bracha, people won't deem it important enough. They won't actually sit there. So it's either all or nothing. It goes together as a package. You sit and you make a bracha. That's Rav Shita. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda, who referred to Shmini Atzeres as they ate for brachas and also for Sukkah, what he meant was bruchi lemi varchinan. Although we sit in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, but without a bracha, we don't want to interfere with the kedusha of Shmini Atzeres. We don't want it to appear like a contradiction. So leave the bracha out. You could sit there. Taisa says sometimes people sit in the Sukkah even when it's not Yom Tov. They like the open air, the outdoors. So sitting in the Sukkah isn't really an outright contradiction. It doesn't contravene kedusha as Yom Tov Shmini Atzeres. But leave the bracha out of it, so it doesn't appear like a contradiction. So once again, according to Rav, on Shmini Atzeres, which is really Safek Zayin, we sit and we make a bracha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you eat in the Sukkah without a bracha. Amar Rav Yosef, adopt Rabbi Yehuda Shita. That's the correct approach. I have a raya from these Amoraim. To Rav Huna Bar Bizna, v'chol Gedolei Hadar. He and all the other Gedolei Hadar, iklu b'Sukkah b'Shmini Safek Shvi. They encountered a Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, which is Safek day 7. What do they do? Meisev havayasvu. It's only sat in the Sukkah. They ate in the Sukkah. Bruchi lebrichi, but without a bracha. So apparently that's the correct approach. Use the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, but without a bracha. Says, how do you know? To interpret their story in this manner, perhaps really they hold that you make a bracha on Shmini Atzeres. If you sit, you make a bracha. Why didn't they make the bracha? They already made a bracha at the beginning of Yom Tov, and that suffices for the entire Zman HaMitzvah, for all 7 days, all 8 days. Perhaps they hold Command Amar like that Shita, which says, Kim and Shabirach Yom Tov Rishon. Once you make a bracha leish basuk on the first day of Yom Tov, that exempts the entire Zman HaMitzvah, the entire Yom Tov. Shuv Ein Mevarach. You no longer make a bracha. So they had a bracha way back in the beginning of Yom Tov. And says the Gemara Gemiri, so he responded, Rav Yosef responded, Gemiri, I heard from my Rebbe that the circumstance of that story was as follows. The Me'efer also, they came from the, Efer is a swamp, they came from the outdoors where they didn't have a sukkah all throughout sukkahs. This was their first sukkah experience, in which case they never made a bracha. And what did they do? They came into the sukkah and they didn't make a bracha this time either, apparently because that's the correct approach. On Shmini Atzeres, we use a sukkah without a bracha. So in summary, according to this approach in the Gemara, on Shmini Atzeres in Chutzlars, where it's a suffix day 7, a suffix, if it's still the zman of sukkah, you must sit in the sukkah. What are you meant to do? Rav says, sit in the sukkah with a bracha. Don't be mechalak between the mitzvah and the bracha. Because if you're going to suspend the bracha, it's going to interfere with the performance of the mitzvah. Everything will get cancelled. So do it together. Rabbi Yehuda says, sit in the sukkah, but the bracha, that it's going to be interference. So the kedusha of Shmini Atzeres, it's going to be like a tarti desastre, self-contradiction. Leave the bracha out. And Rabbi Yosef assumes that the correct approach is Rabbi Yechon's opinion. You sit in the sukkah without a bracha. There was another version of this machlokes as follows. All agree, Rav and Rabbi Yehuda both agree that a bracha is not in place because it serves to interfere with the status of Shmini Atzeres. If you're going to make a bracha, you're going to make it obvious that you're still considering it somewhat mainstream sukkahs, which is a stira to Shmini Atzeres. So skip the bracha. Keep pligi l'meisa. The question between Rav and Rabbi Yehuda is whether we actually sit in the sukkah at all on Shmini Atzeres. L'mandam shiva sukkah. According to Rav, who regarded Shmini Atzeres as day 7 with respect to sukkah, what did he mean? Meisa v'yasvinan. All he meant to say is that he meant to sit in the sukkah. No bracha, but at least use the sukkah. What does Rabbi Yehuda refer to Shmini Atzeres as the 8th with respect to this and that, meaning for brachas and tefillah, rechsamaz and kiddush, and lezeh, and for sukkahs? What he meant to say was there is no sukkah at all. Meisav nami lo yasvinan. We don't want to sit in the sukkah at all in order not to interfere, to create that wrong impression. Today is still Chol HaMoed, it's not Shmini Atzeres, so leave the sukkah out of the picture. Rav Yosef, Nekoit the Rabbi Yehuda biyadcha. Rabbi Yosef responds and he says, you know what? You want to adopt Rabbi Yehuda's shita. That's the correct approach. What does Rabbi Yehuda say once again? He says, don't sit in the sukkah at all on Shmini Atzeres. How do I know that's the correct opinion? The Mara the Shmaitza money. Who is the Manda Omar who quoted Rav? Let's go back a second. We started with Rabbi Yehuda, Braid Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, who quoted Rav to the effect of that you have to sit in the sukkah, right, without a bracha. That's the approach we're taking now. He held you use the sukkah without a bracha. So who's the Mara the Shmat Mani? Who is he? Who's the one that presented Shitas Rav? Who disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda, who says you don't sit in the sukkah at all? Who was he? Rav Yehuda, Braid Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, right? So he's the author of that shita. He's the one who presented it, and he himself didn't follow through with that shita. So apparently, that shita is inaccurate, or at least we're not meant to adopt that shita la'alacha, because the one who presented the shita, he himself didn't follow that opinion. Ubeshmini Savik Shvi, we see that on the 8th day, which was really Safek day 7, he himself, Lavar mi sukkah, Yosef, he would sit out of the sukkah. Therefore says Rabbi Yehuda, it's probable to assume that the correct opinion is Rabbi Yehuda, and we don't sit in the sukkah at all on Shmini Atzeres. So what's the maskana? Ve'ilchasa concludes the Gemara. Meisav yasfinan, we actually do sit in the sukkah Shmini Atzeres. Bruchi lo mivrachinan, but without a bracha. So in conclusion, we had two versions in the Gemara with respect to the halacha of using the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, which is really Safek day 7. In approach number 1 in the Gemara, we had Rav who said, you sit and you make a bracha, we don't differentiate. Rabbi Yehuda says, we sit but without a bracha, we don't want to interfere with the kedusha and the status of Shmini Atzeres. So sit in the sukkah where it's not so obvious that it's l'shem mitzvah. So sit in there without a bracha. According to the second approach in the Gemara, all agree there's no bracha because that would be an interference with the kedusha of Shmini Atzeres. Rav says, at least you sit in the sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda says, you don't even sit in the sukkah. Maskan of the Gemara is, Mesav Yasvina, we sit in the sukkah, but without a bracha. I tell you the SUKKAH, what happened to lulav? We should take the lulav on the 8th day, if it's suffix zayin. He says because when it comes to lulav, they didn't want to be masakin, to take the lulav misafik, because it's Yom Tov. And really, the lulav is technically muktzah, but muktzah is set aside, is suspended for the sake of mitzvah. If you're going to take a lulav on the 8th day of Shmini Atzeres, it's going to make it obvious that it's not really Shmini Atzeres. Why are you touching muktzah? Obviously, it's the Cholamoid. Obviously, it's still Zman Lulav. It's going to make it obvious that it's not Shmini Atzeres. That's a real stira to the status of Shmini Atzeres. So we leave that behind. However, says Taisus, when it comes to Sukkah, in the words of Taisus on top, about 3 lines from the top, Aval Sukkah, when it comes to Sukkah, it's different. Sometimes the outdoors are pleasant, and something he would do regardless. Even on Yontif, perhaps he would go out to the Sukkah and have his picnic outside. So spending times outdoors isn't necessarily a stira to Yom Tov. Based on this, Taisus, the Karban Nasanel, says that if it's a stormy, very cold day where the elements are interfering, he says perhaps you should not be sitting out in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, because that wouldn't work with Taisus Svara, because that would make it obvious that you're doing L'Shem Mitzvah. And based on that Karban Nasanel, there are those that are noyig not to eat in the sukkah, at least to minimize their sukkah use on Shmini Atzeres. But according to the straightforward Psak Halacha in the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch, indeed we do use the sukkah fully on Shmini Atzeres, however without a bracha. Continues the Gemara. Continuing on the topic of Shmini Atzeres. Rabbi Yehuda, he says a chiddush. Oimrim zman b'shmini shel chag. He meant to make a new bracha of Zman. Zman means bracha of Shechayanu, thanking Hashem for giving us the opportunity of arriving, of living until this, and experiencing the special moment, the special time, the special Yom Tov, or the special mitzvah. So he meant to make Shechayanu a special new bracha of Shechayanu b'Shmini Shel Chag in honor of Shmini Atzeres, although he already made a Shechayanu at the beginning of Sukkot. Ve'ein oimrim zman b'Shviyah Shel Pesach, as opposed to the Yom Tov Achron of Pesach, the 7th day of Pesach, that doesn't get its own Shechayanu. It's considered part of the mainstream Yom Tov of Pesach. It doesn't get its own Zman. It's not considered its own independent Yom Tov. V'amar Reb Levi bar Chama. V'itema, some say it was Reb Chama bar Chanina Teda. I'll prove this to you. That what? That Shmini Atzeres is considered an independent entity, separate from the rest of Sukkot, and therefore it gets its own Shechayanu. You know why? It's so different than the rest of Sukkot in terms of mitzvahs. Sharei Cholok B'Gimel Dvarim. In 3 ways we find Shmini Atzeres is separate from the rest of Sukkot. B'Sukkah, we no longer use a Sukkah. If it's really Shmini Atzeres, as it's shown, we don't use a Sukkah. V'Lulav, we no longer shake Lulav. V'Nisach HaMayim, we no longer pour the water on the Mizbeach, which was done all throughout Sukkot by the Talmid Shel Shachar. So we find 3 distinctions. Apparently it's a special, separate Yom Tov. Ul Rabbi Yehuda, however, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar, Belug HaYemanasach Kol Shmoni, he held that you would do Nisach HaMayim even on the 8th day of Sukkot. So you would use a lug instead of 3 lugin, and it would happen all throughout the 8 days of Yom Tov. So that distinction is no longer here, because Nisach HaMayim applies on the 8th as well as on the 7th and the 6th and so on. But still we have 2 chilukim. Harei Cholok B'Beis Dvarim. With respect to 2 things, we find a chiluk. Sukkah and Lulav. If that's the case, Shvi Shel Pesach Nami. What about Shvi Shel Pesach? That's 2. That's also different. Harei Cholok B'Achilas Matzah. When it comes to matzah, we find a difference between the first night of Pesach, where there is a chiyuv to have matzah, as opposed to Shvi Shel Pesach, where there is no such chiyuv. Apparently, it's a different Yom Tov. The Amar Mar, as we learned, Laila Harishayna Chayva. There's a chayva to have matzah on the first night. Mikan ve'elach reshus, but past that first night, it's just optional. So why isn't that sufficient grounds to consider Shvi Shel Pesach as a separate, independent Yom Tov? Now, how are you going to compare this to Shmini Atzeres? The Shvi Shel Pesach is different in nature than the first night of Pesach. True, I agree with that. The first night is Rechiv of Matzah, but on the 7th day of Pesach. But Miyayin Cholok, He's no different than the first day of Pesach. There's no Chiv Matzah on the first day of Pesach. So he's really one continuous entity with the beginning of Yom Tov. He's only different than the first night. But if we proceed further to the first day, there is no Chiv Matzah, and likewise the seventh day of Pesach doesn't have a Chiv Matzah. So they're both similar in nature. There's no distinction. There's no reason to consider it an independent Yom Tov. That's why Pesach. Hach, as opposed to Shmini Atzeres, Afilu Miyom Namichalak, Shmini Atzeres is so different than even the first day of Sukkot, where you sit in the Sukkah, you shake lulav, which you don't do in Shmini Atzeres. Ravina Amar, I'll give you another reason to be mechalak between Shmini Atzeres and Shvi Shal Pesach. Zeh chalak mishalafana. Very simple. Shmini Atzeres is different in nature than the days immediately preceding him. On day 7 of Sukkot, we shake lulav, we sit in the Sukkah. On day 8, we don't. So you see that he's set apart, and the rest, he's his own Yom Tov. V'zeh chalak mishalafnei fanav, as opposed to the 7th day of Pesach. The contrast there is not between himself and the days immediately preceding him. No, there's no difference there. The difference is between himself and the days before him, meaning between the day 7 and day 1, or night 1. So, as far as himself and the days preceding him, there's no difference. Right? It's only regarding matzah. The first night we have a chiyuv, on the 7th day we don't. But as far as the days between night 1 and day 7, there's no difference between them and day 7, and therefore we consider it to be one continuous hemshech, one continuous Yom Tov, which does not deserve his own shechiyanu, as opposed to Shmini Atzeres. It's an independent Yom Tov, and he gets his own shechiyanu. It's a new zman, it's a new opportunity, it's a new experience. Rav Papa Amar, if we take a look at the psukim by the Karbanis, we will find that in the lashon of the psukim, the day of Shmini Atzeres is indeed considered separate and independent from the days preceding him. Hachaksiv par, on the 8th day of Sukkot, the Torah requires one par to be brought as a carbon. Hasam ksiv par, as opposed to the other days of Sukkot, we have a multitude of par, many parim. The way it worked was, on the first day of Sukkot, it was 13 parim. Next day it went down to 12, to 11, to 8. On the 8th day, it totally dropped. It didn't work with the same system. It wasn't sequential, it was just one par. So it's pretty clear that he works according to his own rules. It's his own Yom Tov. Ha ksiv par, hasam ksiv parim. So over here it says only one par. Over there, rest of Sukkot, we have many parim. So apparently he's unrelated. On the 8th day it says Bayoim Hashmini Atzeres Teilachem. Hasam ksiv ubayim. During the other days of Sukkot, we find that the Torah connects the days to each other. Ubayim Hasheni, Ubayim Hashlishi. The Vav HaChibur denotes attachment. They all relate to each other. They're one sequence, one system. Shmini Atzeres, it's without the Vav. Bayoim, apparently it's an independent entity, unconnected to the previous days. One more, Rav Ashi Amar, Hachaksiv Kimishpat. In describing the Karbonis of Shmini Atzeres, the Torah used the word Kimishpat, the way it's meant to be on this day. Hasam Ksiv Kimishpatam, as opposed to the other days of Sukkot, we have the word Kimishpatam denoting connection. They're all part of one system, one sequence, one arrangement, and therefore we assume the Shmini Atzeres is a separate Yom Tov. So in summary, we had Rabbi Yechon's Chiddush. We make a separate Shechiyanu. He calls it a bracha of Zman. In honor of Shmini Atzeres, it's an independent Yom Tov. We see that Torah sets it apart from the other days of Sukkot. With respect to Sukkah, Lulav, and Nisach HaMayim, we find differences in Lashonis, in the Psukim. We find that he only needs one par, as opposed to the many brought throughout Sukkot. Bayoim without a Vav, and Kemishpat, denoting independence and separation. Perhaps we can have a brayit or a Rabbi Yechon from a brayis, that there's a new bracha of Shechiyanu, Shmini Atzeres. The brayis says Haparim, Va'elim, Va'kvasim. All these different types of karbonis, cows, rams, sheep, that are brought on Sukkot. Ma'ak v'zeh. They're dependent on each other. Unless you have the entire package, you cannot bring any of them. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, parim ein ma'ach v'zeh. When it comes to parim, they're not so vital. They're not critical to the success of the other karbonis. Why? Why do I discriminate on the parim? Because we see that the Torah minimize. They diminish, they dwindle in number as the Yom Tov proceeds. You begin with 13, down to 12, down to 11. Apparently the Torah is not so makbid on the Purim, therefore even if you're missing them all together, they're not vital and critical. Amr Loi, the Chacham responded, if you can work with that formula, what about the other Karbanos, the Elam and the Kvasim? If you take a look at the 8th day of Sukkot, not only is it one par, so it's very much diminished, but when it comes to the rams, it's only one aisle, as opposed to 2 a day which are brought throughout Sukkot. When it comes to the Kvasim as well, you're down to 7 instead of your typical 14. So all Karbanos go down in number. Perhaps that's an indication of unimportance. So why you be mechalek? You're saying, well, Purim, if they're missing, you could do without them because we see that they go down in number. Apparently the Torah is not so makbid. Well, on Shmini Atzeres, all of them go down in number. Amar Lehen, Rabbi Yehuda responds, you can't prove from Shmini Atzeres. Shmini regel b'fnei atzmehu. Shmini Atzeres is an independent Yom Tov. It's not reckoned as part of the Sukkah's arrangement with respect to Karbanos. And therefore you can't derive anything from there and apply it to the Karbanos of Yom Tov, as opposed to Purim, where the numbers dwindle within the Yom Tov itself. Right? I mentioned you start with 13, go down to 12, to 11, within the Yom Tov itself, you see that the numbers get reduced. So apparently the Torah is not so makbid on them, therefore they're not vital and critical to the success of the entire package. So let's go take a look at Rashi, off to the right here, about 2 lines up. The Brayso says that Purim va'elim va'kvasim hamurim bekarbanis hachag kol yom. All the animals, all the karbanis that you brought on the days of Sukkot, ma'akim ze'aseh, which means if one of them is missing, minor u'in liyom ein makrivin. If one of them is missing, you can't be makriv the rest. Rabbi Yehuda maintained Purim are different. Sharim is smatin. Miyayim al yom, we see on a daily basis they just go down and drop one a day. Amal lekapad le'rachman. Apparently the Torah is not so makbid on them. Hilkach af hamurim liyom ein ma'akvin. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, even the required number for that particular day isn't mi'akiv. Amrulay, they responded, if you're working with this premise that diminishing numbers are indicative of lack of importance, when it comes to the other animals as well, they should not be ma'akiv. Why? They all go down in numbers when it comes to this 8th day of Yom Tov. All throughout Sukkot we have 2 rams and 14 sheep. However, on the 8th you have only 1. So why isn't that a reflection of lack of importance? Rabbi Yehuda responds, Shmini, that's regular b'fnei atzmehu. It's working based on a different arrangement. You can't compare his kabbalah to the rest of Yom Tov. And it doesn't reflect anything regarding the importance of the kabbalah hachag. Continues the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom. So it's still in the midst of Rabbi Yehuda's response. He says, look, Shmini Atzeres is a separate Yom Tov. With regards to what? How is it separate? So Rabbi Yehuda spells it out. He says, we find that the 8th day has its own characteristics, its own Yom Tov characteristics. It sort of mirrors and parallels the rest of Yom Tov. He's considered independent by nature. How? Just as you find throughout all 7 days of Sukkot until Shmini Atzeres. To unin carbon, you have to bring karbanos. V'shir, the Leviim, would sing Shira. Rashi explains, they would pretty much go along the same line, keep the same theme, which was a Shira which with the harvesting content, describing the harvesting of the crops and urging the proper fulfillment of the matonis aniyim, tzedakah to aniyim. So that was the theme all throughout Sukkot when it came to the Shira of the Leviim in the Beis HaMikdash. Ubracha. We're going to see soon what this is. Vilina. Lina means sleeping over in Yerushalayim. So Rashi explains, there are 2 separate concepts when it comes to Lina. Lina was a chiyuv whenever one brought a carbon. You bring a carbon, just go home. You don't just disappear. Bring the carbon, you stay around like a good guest. you only leave the next morning. So that happened whenever you brought a carbon. Lina was required. There was another chiv lina when it comes to Yom Tov. Even without bringing a carbon. You come for Yom Tov to either regal, you stay overnight. You only leave the next morning. So all 7 days of Yom Tov have lina. What does this mean? There are really two aspects included in this statement. The first day of Yom Tov, which was really Yom Tov, required lina. Irrelevant of whether or not you brought a carbon, you have to stay overnight like a good guest. Stay over and then leave the next morning to go back home. When we say all 7 days of Yom Tov need lina, Rashi explains that means if it so happens that he didn't bring his obligatory karbonis, he meant to bring karbonis, oilas ru'iyah, chagiga, when you come for oilah regular. If you haven't brought it on the first day and you happen to bring it on a different day of Yom Tov, then you have a chiv lina on account of your carbon. So either way, the 7 days of Yom Tov feature this concept of lina. So we have four things: carbon, shir, bracha, and lina apply to the 7 days of Sukkot. Likewise, says Rabbi Yehuda, Av Shmini, the same thing regarding Shmini Atzeres. It's considered its own independent Yom Tov, which features these four characteristics, these four elements. To own carbon, it has its own carbon, as we mentioned earlier. V'shir has its own type of shir. Unlike the other shir, which was sung throughout Sukkot, Rashi says he's not sure what it is, it's not clear. Taisus brings, perhaps it's Lamartzeach ala Shminis, which is Tilm Yud Beis, which they used to sing in the shul. Perhaps they did it in the Beis Hamikdash as well. So it's its own different type of shir. Bracha. The 8th day needs its own bracha, so we'll see what this is. The Gemara is going to assume that it's Shechiyanu. Vilina, and once again, you have to stay overnight after Shmini Atzeres. Okay, in any case, how does this pertain to us? So this is the end of the Bryce. How is this relevant to us, to our discussion regarding Shechiyanu? We have a clear raya. It says the Gemara that Shechiyanu is meant to be said on the 8th day as well. It's a separate Yom Tov, a right to Rabbi Yochanan. What then does bracha mean? All 7 days require bracha, and the 8th day requires bracha. What does bracha mean? We're assuming it's Shechiyanu. My love is man. Should we not assume that when Rabbi Yehuda mentioned the word bracha, he meant Shechiyanu? Apparently, you make a new Shechiyanu on Shmini Atzeres, it's right to Rabbi Yehuda. Lo, says the Gemara, not at all. Birchas hamazon atfila. What does this mean? Let's go over to Rashi on top. My love's man. Hach bracha dekam Rabbi Yehuda mahi. What was he referring to? Lav hainu zman la'atzma. Perhaps that Shmini Atzeres needs its own Shechiyanu. No, Birchas hamazon. The ar hashta amrinan as yom chag HaSukkos hazeh. What he meant that we change our reference. We change our point of reference. Instead of Chag HaSukkos, we refer to it as Yom Shmini Atzeres. V'kan es Yom Shmini Chag Atzeres hazeh. So he didn't mean Shechiyanu. He meant that when we daven, we say Birchas hamazon, we say Kiddush, we no longer refer to Shmini Atzeres as Sukkos, but rather as Shmini Atzeres. But he's not speaking about Shechiyanu, and there's no riot to Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, Chinami Mestaver. In fact, I'll prove that the Bryce is not discussing Shechiyanu. Why? Because if the Bryce would be speaking about Shechiyanu, how can the Bryce say that all throughout Yom Tov, all throughout the 7 days you have Zman? Zman kol shiva mi'ika. Since when do you have Shechiyanu all throughout 7 days? You say it on the first day and that's it. Hala kasha, that wouldn't be a kasha. Dilay baruch idna. All the Bryce means is that if he didn't have the opportunity to make the bracha on the first day, he could always make it up. Mevarach l'macha. He'll say the Shechiyanu the next day, or Liyam Achrina, or the following day. That's all it meant. 1 second, how can he do that? You need a kais of yain to enable him to make the Shechiyanu. And who says he has wine past the first day of Yom Tov? Actually assumes that their wine supply was limited and was already consumed on the first day of Yom Tov. Why do we assume that he has access to wine on Chol HaMoed? Lema Mesayeh Rav Nachman. Oh, perhaps it's going to be a right to Rav Nachman that you don't need wine. Don't Rav Nachman. Zman. The bracha of Shechiyanu Oimroi Afilu B'Shuk, that can be said even out in the street with the Arab kois. Isn't this a right to Rav Nachman? The Amras Bein in kois, because if you say a kois is required, it won't work here. Kois Kol Yom Mi'ika. Since when does he have access to a kois all throughout Chol HaMoed? Says perhaps he has a kois. He happened to find some wine. That's what the Bryce is referring to. Perhaps a kois of wine is a requirement when it comes to Shechiyanu. the Brisa says you can make Shechianu all throughout the 7 days, it means if he missed the opportunity on the first day, he can always make it up later, provided he has a kais. So conclusion, we don't really have a raya. Either way, we figured we're speaking about Shechianu, which will be said on the 8th day. The Gemara said, no, perhaps we're simply referring to the nusach of Tefillah, Berachas Hamazon, and we're referring to it as Yom Shmini Atzeres instead of Sukkot. We're not speaking about Shechianu. We can't prove that that's the case. Perhaps it is speaking about Shechianu, and the Brisa is simply speaking where he didn't make it the first day, he's making it up, and he has a kais. So it's not partial one way or the other. We don't have a right. Continues the Gemara. V'savar Rabbi Yehuda, is that true that Rabbi Yehuda holds Shmini Ton Lina? That Shmini Atzeres requires sleeping over in Yerushalayim? Right? That was the way Rabbi Yehuda presented Shmini Atzeres. It needs Lina. Is that true? It seems inconsistent with another halacha presented in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. V'atani, listen to this Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda. Menayin lePesach Sheni she'eina Ton Lina. If a fellow couldn't bring Pesach Rishon, he was Tamei, or was far away from Yerushalayim, he skipped the Pesach Rishon. He could always make it up, bring the carbon during Pesach Sheni, Yudal Be'ir. Says Rabbi Yehuda, Minayin lePesach Sheni. How do we know that Pesach Sheni is not considered, not regarded on the same level as Pesach Rishon? She'eina Ton Lina. You don't have to sleep over in Yerushalayim. Lina is not required. Shenamar upaniso ba'boker v'olachta lo yelecha. Here's the pasuk of Lina. You come here to visit me. You come here to bring a carbon. You come here to spend Yom Tov with me. Wait until morning. Upaniso ba'boker, and then go back home. So the pasuk here is actually referring to a Pesach Rishon. So Lina is applied to Pesach Rishon. Vuksiv. What does the pasuk say afterwards? Sheishes yamim teichel matzos. You meant to have your matzos aside from the first day. You meant to have it 6 days following as well. So it's a 7-day Yom Tov. And we learn from here that the concept of Lina only applies to a 7-day Yom Tov. Es shaton, shishaton Lina, only a type of Yom Tov, such as Pesach Rishon, which has this halacha of refraining from chametz all throughout the 6 or 7 days. Lina is applied as well. Es she'eina ton shisha, as opposed to Pesach Sheni, which has no halacha to eat matzah, to refrain from chametz all throughout the 6 and 7 days. Eina ton Lina, there's no Lina applied there. Rashi says on Pesach Sheni, you can have your chametz. As long as you have your matzah with the Pesach, you have that mitzvah, afterwards you can go and have your sandwich. Rashi and Chumash actually says you can't have the chametz and matzah together as one, because they're not having matzah. It has to be a mitzvah achilas matzah, but then you can have chametz. There's no chametz restrictions at all. And therefore, says the Gemara, there is no Lina. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yehuda speaking. Now let's analyze the Brisa. L'mu'utei mai, what is he coming to exclude? When is there no Lina? Mai lav l'mu'utei nami shmini shel chag. Let's assume that he's going to exclude even Shmini Atzeres because it's not an 8-day Yom Tov, it's not a 7-day Yom Tov, it's not a 6-day Yom Tov. It doesn't conform to these guidelines. Lina only applies to a full-fledged Yom Tov. So this is in direct contradiction to Rabbi Yehuda, who told us that there is Lina on the 8th day of Sukkot, even though it's just a single day. It's a 1-day Yom Tov. Says Marlai, no, not at all. Lim ute Pesach Sheni d'kavasei. A 1-day Yom Tov like Shavuos, Shmini Atzeres has Lina requirements. The Brisa here is simply Bimamayit Pesach Sheni, which is similar in nature to Pesach Rishon. So we're just Bimamayit something similar to itself, meaning Pesach Rishon has Lina, but not Pesach Sheni. Because Pesach Sheni is not a Yom Tov at all. So it doesn't get Lina, but a different type of Yom Tov. Even if it's a short-lived Yom Tov. It's a 1-day Yom Tov. Shavuos, Shmini Atzeres, we'll still have Lina. Hachinami Mestaber, says the Gemara, I'll even prove the point to you. What are we proving? That Rabbi Yehuda is just excluding Pesach Sheni. But any other Yom Tov, as short as it may be, or any other similar experience, as we're going to see soon, Bikurim, even though it's a short-lived experience, it needs Lina. That's not Habikurim to Unin carbon. When you bring Bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash, you have to bring a carbon with them. V'shir, and the Levim would sing a special shir in honor of Bikurim. Utnufa, you have to wave about the Bikurim. Velina, you have to sleep over in Yerushalayim. So that's the Mishnah. Who is the man, the Amar of this Mishnah? It's Rabbi Yehuda. How do you know? Man shamas le Amar Tnufa. Who is the Man Amar that requires Tnufa to be performed on Yibikurim? Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Torn Lina. Apparently, this Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. The fact that he requires Tnufa is indicative of the fact that it's Rabbi Yehuda. And Lina is associated with Bikurim. So you see that unless it's Pesach Sheni, which isn't Yom Tov at all, and is excluded from that pasuk, otherwise Lina is something meant to be done. Whether Shavuos, whether Bikurim, Ushmini Atzeres, the Sanya. How do we know that Rabbi Yehuda is the one that requires Tnufa by Bikurim? The Sanya Rabbi Omer V'inachtay. See, the pasuk says that you take your Bikurim, V'nichoy Lefnei Hashem. Right? The Kohen takes it and puts it Lefnei Hashem by the Mizbeach. And then the pasuk again says that V'inachtay, you'll place it by the Mizbeach. Why are you placing it again? It's already there. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, apparently something happened in between. You placed it near the Mizbeach, and you picked it up again, you did Tnufa, and then you placed it back again. Rabbi Yehuda V'inachtay is Tnufa. The fact that he has to place it again alongside the Mizbeach, after he already did it once, apparently something happened in between. He lifted it to do the Tnufa. You're maintaining that it's referring to Tnufa. Perhaps the pasuk is simply describing placing the Bikurim near the Mizbeach. That's it. A one-time placement. That doesn't work. Once the pasuk already said he's going to place it near the Mizbeach, we've already addressed placement. It's already there. What is he doing placing it again? It's already on the floor. Apparently Tnufa happened in between. So it was set up alongside the Mizbeach, lifted for Tnufa, and then put back again. So Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says Bikurim needs Tnufa. And the Mishnah, which describes Bikurim needing Tnufa and Lina, apparently is Rabbi Yehuda. So what's the maskana? Lina is a necessary element in the Bikurim experience. Likewise, in the Shmini Atzeres experience, only one exception is Pesach Sheni. How do you know, says the Gemara? Looking for Manda Amar, who applies Tnufa to Bikurim. I found another Manda Amar, Blazer ben Yaakov. So maybe he's the author of that Mishnah. That Bikurim needs Tnufa and Lina, but not Rabbi Yehuda. The Sani we find in a Bryce. Pasuk says, the Kohen will take the basket from your hands. What does this teach us? Limud ala Bikurim she'tu'una Tnufa. Tu'una needs Tnufa. Divrei Blazer ben Yaakov. How do you see Tnufa in this pasuk? My time with the Blazer ben Yaakov. Asher yad mishlamim. We learn Egzer Shava. We connect the psukim of Bikurim to the psukim of Shlamim through the words Yad. Bikurim, it says the Kohen will take the tenna, the basket, from your hands. So we have the word Yad. And we find by the Tnufa of the Karban Shlamim the word Yadav, hands. Yadav Tvi'ena, speaking about the owner, the Baal of the Karban, will bring the Shlamim, and the pasuk over there continues and says there's going to be a Tnufa. We connect the two things. We say Ma kan koyin af lahalan koyin. And just as over here by Bikurim, we make mention of the koyin, right? In that first pasuk, look at koyin atana biyadech. So koyin is in the picture. Af lahalan koyin. Likewise by Shlamim, the koyin will be involved in the Tnufa procedure. Uma lahalan balam, and just as by Shlamim, the balam, the owner is involved. Yadav Tvi'ena is a reference to the owner's hands. Afkan balam. Likewise by Bikurim, we have the owner involved in the Tnufa. So according to Blazer, we learn the concept of Tnufa through this Gzeira Shav. Yad from Shlamim. Tnufa is required here, and in both cases, it's a joint effort by the Baalim and the Kohen. How does this work? Okay, so I can both do Tnufa at once. Kohen maniach yodei tachas yad ha-Baalim. The Kohen places his hands beneath the hands of the owner, and they do Tnufa together. Says Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Ma kan be Bikurim Kohen dichsiv l'kach ha-Kohen. Just as by Bikurim we have the Kohen involved. Over there by Shlamim as well. And just as by Shlamim we have the owner involved, by Bikurim as well. How does this work? The Kohen places his hands underneath, means lower, under the hands of the Baalim. So Rashi says it doesn't necessarily mean that the Kohen places his hands directly underneath the Baalim. Rather, tachas yad ha'balam means balam oichsim b'sfas ha'tena. So you have a basket with a rim. The owner grabs hold of the rim. The kohen maniach yadav tachas shulav. The kohen places his hands beneath the bottom of the basket. V'chein nefarish Mesechus Bikurim, as explained in Mesechus Bikurim. It explains the reason is because otherwise it's chatzitza. Right? If the kohen is going to place his hands beneath the owner's hands, the kohen will not be touching the basket directly. So this way we worked it out that the balam holds onto the sides, the kohen on bottom, and they do it together. So bottom line is we don't have a raya at the Mishnah Bikurim, which associated Bikurim with Tnufa and Lina is Rabbi Yehuda, because perhaps it's Rabbi Yaakov who requires Tnufa by Bikurim as well, and perhaps he's the one that says Lina. So we can no longer prove that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Lina is a requirement by Bikurim. We couldn't prove it one way or the other. Okay, getting back to our discussion regarding the bracha of Shechiyanu on Shmini Atzeres. Rabbi Yehuda maintained it's a separate Yom Tov, requires a special bracha. Ma'y Havi Allah, says the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. Let's go back to our Shaila. What's the conclusion? Do we or do we not make a bracha of Shechiyanu on Shmini Atzeres? Rav Machlekes. Rav Nachman Amar, Oimrim Zman b'Shmini Shachag. You do make a separate Zman, separate Shechiyanu, in honor of Shmini Atzeres. It's a separate, independent Yom Tov. Rav Sheshes Amar, Ein Oimrim Zman b'Shmini Shachag. No, we don't make Zman on Shmini Shachag. In some ways, Shmini Shachag is considered part of the previous Yom Tov's experience. The Gemara speaks about Hashlama. A person misses the opportunity, doesn't bring a carbon that he's meant to bring throughout the 7 days of Sukkot. His Chagiga, his Eilas Riyah. He can make it up on the 8th day. So you see, when it comes to Hashlama, the 8th, Shmini Atzeres is still somewhat connected. He identifies with the previous Yom Tov. And therefore, says Rav Sheshes, that's enough of a connection. That's enough of a relationship, and we don't allow a special Shechiyanu. It's not really considered a fully independent entity, and doesn't really justify Shechiyanu. Vilchas says at the Gemara, what's the bottom line? Zman b'Shmini Shachag, as we do today. We speak a special Shechiyanu on Shmini Atzeres. Tanya Kavaseder Rav Nachman, we have a right to Rav Nachman, and indeed a Shechiyanu is required. Shmini Regel B'fnei Atzma. We're going to have a list of 6 items which highlight the fact that Shmini Atzeres is a separate, independent Yom Tov. L'inyan Pazar Kashav. So this is a Rashi Tevis representing 6 concepts. What are these things? Pious. Pazar, the pay is pious. Pious B'fnei Atzma, a separate lottery. Which means that all throughout Yom Tov, the Kohanim would follow a certain arrangement to determine who gets the schus to makav karbanis. When it comes to Shmini Atzeres, it worked on its own rules and its own guidelines. It didn't work with the same arrangement as the previous days. Zman b'fnei atzmai, it deserves its own Shechiyanu. Regel b'fnei atzmai, considered its own Yom Tov. Rashi says we no longer sit in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres. Karban b'fnei atzmai. The number of karbanis on Shmini Atzeres are very much unlike the number of karbanis brought throughout Yom Tov, as we discussed earlier. Shira ifnei atzmai. When it comes to the shira of the Levim during the karbanis, it's its own independent theme. It doesn't work along the theme of the shira of Sukkot. And finally, bracha ifnei atzmai, according to the first Pshat and Rashi, it's referring to the bracha of tefillah, bracha of Brachas Hamazon and Kiddush. We no longer refer to it as Sukkot, rather as Shmini Atzeres. So we have 5 reasons to consider Shmini Atzeres as a separate Yom Tov. And indeed, we recite a special Shechiyanu in honor of this new Zman. So in summation, Rabbi Yechon tells us a Chiddush, where Oimrim Shechiyanu on Shmini Shal Sukkot, it's a separate, independent Yom Tov. In which way is it separate? We have a whole long list of distinctions. Shmini Atzeres is set apart from the days which precede it in regards to 3 things. Sukkah, right, we no longer sit in the Sukkah. Lulav, you no longer shake Lulav. And Nisach HaMayim, according to Tanakama, only apply throughout Sukkot and not in Shmini Atzeres. Likewise, in the Psuk we find a distinction we find that it's only one par on Shmini Atzeres as opposed to many brought throughout Sukkot. Apparently, he's on a different track. The pasuk refers to Shmini Atzeres as biyayim without the vav, denoting separation and independence. Kimishpat, its own rules, its own guidelines, as opposed to Kimishpat Tam, used to describe the karbanos throughout Sukkot. Shmini Atzeres mirrors your typical Yom Tov with respect to its own carbon, its own shir, its own bracha, and chiyuv lina. And finally, we have Pazar Kashav, has its own lottery system for the Kohanim, has its own Zman, Shachianu. It's its own regal. It's no longer sitting in the sukkah, its own type of carbon, its own shir. And the Nusach HaBracha, Tefillah, Bracha Hamazon, and Kiddush, is different. We refer to it as Shmini Atzeres rather than Sukkos. Okay, let's do a quick chazara. Do we sit in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres in Chutz La'aretz, or we have a suffix, whether it's really day 7 chayiv in sukkah? We have machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yehuda. According to the first version of the Gemara, Rav held we treat it like day 7 completely, with respect to yeshiva, basukah, and bracha. Rabbi Yehuda says we sit in the sukkah, but don't make a bracha, which will appear to be a stira to the kedusha of Yom Tov Shmini. According to version 2 of the Gemara, all agree there's no bracha. Machlokes regarding sitting. Rav says we sit in the sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda says we don't sit in the sukkah. The maskana of the Gemara is we sit without a bracha. We spoke about chiyuv lina. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there is no lina Pesach Sheni. It's not really a Yom Tov which requires lina, but there is lina on all the other Yom Tovim, even the short Yom Tovim, Shavuos and Shmini Atzeres, and we have the concept of lina by Bikurim as well. Rabbi Yehuda was machalish that Shmini Atzeres is a separate, independent entity which requires its own shechiyanu. Rav Nachman concurs with that, and that seems to be the halacha l'maisa. V'ilchas ha'omrim zman b'shmini shel chag. Kol tov to you and much hatzlacha.